Welcome to A Mind for Life. We're here today in the third video in the Brainwashing 101 mini-series. All right, so we're going to get right into the video, but let me say this like I said in the other videos in this series. We're doing shadow work. We're going into the shadow. We're going into those dark places, those hidden places, those places where treasure is. And I say that because oftentimes in the shadow is where the treasures are. We can't have enlightenment without shadow. Oftentimes in the shadow are those things that are exerting an influence over our lives that we don't want to look at, that we don't want to see. We don't want to feel that anymore. However, to feel that, to see that, to bring that into the light of consciousness is the breakthrough. Now, as I said before, we have to do this according to our tolerance level. You will know what your tolerance levels are by how you feel. So if you're doing too much shadow work, if you're going into those dark places too much, you're going to feel depressed eventually. You're going to feel anger, which can lead to that depression. You might feel bitter. You might have a grudge. It doesn't mean anything's wrong. It just means you're in the shadow too much, right? So your feelings will let you know, but we need balance. And the shadow provides that balance. If you look out into your world, you see shadow. Shadow is a part of our lives here. So we're going to go into shadow. And again, tolerance level stuff. Shadow tolerance, let's call it that. Now, let's go into an example here. Now, first, before I do that, let me do this. Let me recap. So in the last video, we basically talked about brainwashing as a thing. Brainwashing is looked at as a verb or a process, but we want to talk about it as a thing. As a thing, it has three components: doubt, perspective, and defense. When it comes to doubt, that branches off into mass agreement. Everybody's doing this. What's your problem? We haven't had a problem with anybody but you. That's mass agreement. Peer pressure. Peer pressure doesn't go away after high school, by the way. The second thing is status. In other words, they are the expert. They went to school. They've been doing this for a long time. They have all the money. They got a multi-billion-dollar business. So what do I know? That's status causing you to doubt. The last and most powerful is an appeal to the highest of all, the Most High, God. In other words, the creator of the universe says this. And you're going to go against the creator? Do you know what happened when others went against the creator? And you're going to go, then you're just like them, you see? So that appeal to a higher power is to shake your foundation of knowledge and belief up, which will eventually open the door for a new perspective. The second is perspective. There has to be another worldview that's given to you, that you experience. And then the last is defense, where you're going to defend this new perspective at all costs, and it's built into the perspective. You will die for it. So that is looking at brainwashing as a thing, and we talked about that. Now let's look at this new video here. I'm going to expand the idea of brainwashing out a little bit more. Let's talk about Johnny. We all know Johnny. There are two scenarios with Johnny, by the way. One is Johnny is seeking truth. Johnny wants to know. Johnny wants to know who he is. Johnny wants to know who God is. Johnny wants to know why he's here. Johnny has the fundamental questions we all have. Johnny goes and sees a group. They meet at a certain time. He starts to go to the group. Johnny has fellowship with the group. The things that the group is talking about, Johnny starts to connect with that. It makes sense to him. He's watching videos. He's hearing speakers. He's fellowshipping, having conversations. He's reading books, literature. He's even given a talk or two himself. So Johnny's beginning to get this. He's beginning to see the world in a different way. Now, as Johnny progresses with this, there's an idea that Johnny is not from here. that Johnny is from another star system. He's actually an alien on the earth. Now, that would have sounded crazy to Johnny 6 months ago. But now, because of what Johnny has read, because of the conversations Johnny's had, because of what Johnny has saw, Johnny starts to say, maybe that's not so far-fetched. Now, that it goes on. Johnny's belief is being reinforced through the rituals that they're doing. Now the idea is that the aliens out there are going to come back and get us. Our brothers out there in the other star system are going to come back for us. And there's a time set for this. Now, that's would sound crazy to Johnny 8 months ago. But now Johnny's like, well, maybe that's true. Maybe it's true. And it makes sense to Johnny. Johnny gets this now. He knows that the world wouldn't understand, but he understands. So that time comes up, and it's time to take this journey. So Johnny's going to do this through the Kool-Aid. Johnny's going to drink Kool-Aid. Everybody's going to drink Kool-Aid and go meet their brothers and sisters in the other star system. They're going to come back for them. So Johnny drinks the Kool-Aid, and Johnny is no longer living here. Second scenario with Johnny. Johnny's still seeking truth. Johnny wants to know who he is, wants to know where he comes from, wants to know the secrets and meaning of life. Has the fundamental questions. Who is God? Why am I here? What am I? Johnny sees a group online. He goes and meets the group and they talk. Now, the thing with Johnny is that Johnny begins to connect with the group. They are in nature. They're planting trees. They live in nature, but Johnny goes to meet them every week. Johnny's given books to read. Johnny watches videos. There's a speaker. Johnny has fellowship. Starts to make more and more sense to Johnny. Now, as Johnny progresses in his connection with the group, they present Johnny with the idea of how about living with us here in nature. Now, that would have sounded weird to Johnny 6 months ago. But now Johnny's like, wow, this makes sense. I think I can do this. He's in the group. They're talking. They're sharing information. Johnny goes and lives in nature. Totally off grid. Their goal is to plant 1 million trees within a year. Now, that's the second scenario of Johnny. Now, my question to you is this. Which one of those is good or bad? In other words, Johnny dying or Johnny being in nature planting trees? Which one is good or bad here? And are they both brainwashing? Because Johnny died and Johnny's in nature planting trees off grid, is one more or less brainwashing? Okay? The last part of this is, does the intention of the brainwasher matter? Can we really know what the intentions are? Is it important to find out that that person who had Johnny drink the Kool-Aid really believed this, or was he just wanting to kill everybody? How can we figure this out? Is this important to figure out? And my answer to those is that both are brainwashing, and the intention of the brainwasher does not matter. And I'm going to say this. We have what I call the divine right of choice. We have the divine right of choice, meaning that we can choose, and we should be able to choose, and we are endowed by the Creator to have the freedom of choice of what we know, what we believe, and what our perspectives are. So we have that choice. That's a choice we have. So Johnny being maneuvered into these outcomes without it being explicit to Johnny from the beginning is brainwashing. And we cannot figure out the inner of another. You are the apex of your own I am presence. You are the sovereign of your universe. You are the little g of your universe. You're made in the image of the Creator of the all universes. And in that sense, there is no need, nor is it even relevant to try and figure out another's intention in this regard. Now, what about those of us who are sheeple. You know the word sheeple, the people and the sheep put together, meaning that the people who are not inner-directed, who don't have a plan, who are not trying to figure out who they really are and who God is and what life and love and these things are about, who just go along or comfortable, so-called, in their captivity. They shut up when they're told to shut up. They talk when they're told to talk. They move when they're told to move, etc., etc. What about them? Shouldn't they be brainwashed? Because without there being some sort of unifying element mentally with them, they would just do anything. Wouldn't it be chaos? Now, in 1633, there was a Pope Gregory the 15th, who had this idea of propagation of Catholicism as the one true way of life. It was seen by him that this was a good thing. He thought this was a good thing to get in the minds of the people and persuade them to go with this particular form of religion in the face of others who disagreed. Now, he thought that was a good thing. It was brainwashing. Now, in 1928, there was a book written called Propaganda by Edward Bernays. 1928, Edward Bernays, Propaganda. This book said, hey, listen, it's important for the democracy that people are manipulated. In other words, that their tastes, their minds, their likes, their dislikes, their self-image, their actions are manipulated by the invisible men. Because if not, we would have chaos. So through this, we're ordering chaos. Through brainwashing, we're ordering chaos. And it's brainwashing still. It's a flimsy attempt to justify a superior attitude. In other words, who gives the brainwasher the authority to brainwash? Now, just say the sheep will say, okay, you can brainwash me because I don't want to try to figure all this out. That is still not brainwashing, because the sheeple have decided in the face of this to agree to be brainwashed. But there's quite another thing when we call what they call the engineering of consent by the invisible man, the shadow government, who are the true rulers of this society, according to this book. Now, that is brainwashing, and it was used to manipulate the masses of people into a certain mindset, into a certain behaviors, into their own self-image. Imagine you get to a place in your life when you realize that who you thought you were given that. Imagine this. You were told you were a certain thing, so you believe this. You practice these thoughts all your life. You thought you liked this. You thought you didn't like that. You thought this was good and this was bad. Can you imagine getting to a place where even your heroes, you come to find out that it was all engineered, that it was all engineered behind the scenes by the so-called invisible men to have you move into a certain direction and place in your life? Imagine that. Imagine the depth of that shadow. Now, let's think about this. What about those of us who are in our lower natures? Shouldn't those of us be brainwashed? In other words, those of us who plunder, who pillage, who steal, who murder, who rape, shouldn't those of us who are like that in our lower natures be brainwashed into a higher taste, into a higher state of consciousness, into a higher ethic? Shouldn't that be brainwashing? Think about that for a minute. In other words, the invisible men, according to this book, Propaganda, 1928, Edward Bernays, the invisible men have the compass of ethics and morals. So they're going to covertly manipulate the minds of those in their lower natures so that they don't do bad stuff. Now, the thing is this. For the simple fact that it has to be done covertly shows you this, that the divine right of choice operates in every human being, because if it were covert, there would be pushback. If it were covert, that it wouldn't be going along with. The fact that it has to be done covertly tells you something. Who is operating in their lower nature, really? To justify those operating in their lower natures is not human. 3/5 of a human not fully human, not really capable, is a stance of arrogance. It's a means to justify certain type of abuse. And brainwashing is a certain type of abuse. Some call it gaslighting. Some call it reverse psychology. So in this video, I wanted to open up this idea of brainwashing a little bit. Give some examples of it that we've seen and talk about how it's actually been institutionalized. It's not just some, low-level psychology stuff. In other words, this has been written about and been implemented. We can see how propaganda has been implemented throughout history. It's the covert, deliberate changing of another's perspective to fulfill an agenda. That's evil. It goes against the divine right that every human being has to make a choice. And we see it even today. Imagine the people who you thought you looked up to are moving along a certain agenda to maneuver you into a certain taste, into a certain way of thinking, and molding your mind to an agenda and an outcome that would benefit others at your expense. This is what brainwashing does. Okay, so I wanted to get this expansion on brainwashing out. So the question is this, and we'll answer this in the next video. How do we know when we're being brainwashed? How do we know if we've been brainwashed? Are we living life on our own terms, really? Or have those terms been given to us through brainwashing, which includes this idea of problem, reaction, solution stuff, which is we can talk about in the next video. But those are the questions. I want to answer those questions in the next video and close up this series. Have we been brainwashed? How do we know we're not being brainwashed? How can we figure this out? How can we move into the full divine right of choice? How can we move into truly choosing our life experience? What we truly want to live and experience comes out of what we know, what we believe, and our perspectives. All right? We want to have full conscious awareness of what that is. All right? Thanks for coming to A Mindful Life. Peace out.